The following podcast contains opinions from paid professionals. The information provided in this podcast is general in nature and not advice. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
So we think back for day one of the championships at Royal Randwick, Ben Way. It is one of the great days and I am excited.
The party moves from Rose Hill to Randwick, makes the trip a little easier for you living in the east, and we're going to have a huge crowd out there. All of the talk about the weather at the moment, but regardless, everyone will have a great day, I'm sure.
Great job to you in finding out that info about Zardozi, because at the moment, well, she's nearly into favouritism. She keeps kind of swapping and changing with Riff Rocket. And when we recorded last week, she was a $15 pop. You moved that market big time, my friend. And
James Cummings moved that market. But yeah, I mean, at this time of year and maybe in the months leading up to now, if you're keen on betting in futures, it's all about reading between the lines and what people say to certain people. And to be honest, Godolphin are hard to read sometimes. Everyone looked at it and went, Tom Kitten Derby, Zardozi Oaks. Easy. But then once you sort of looked into her pattern in the spring, it became a little more complex. And she hasn't started yet and she hasn't won. But for those who have backed her, don't feel an obligation to just go in and hope that she wins. If you backed her at $15, you've now got options to back other horses and ensure you win.
Yeah. So we look at the Derby and she backs up from her really good, solid run in the Vinery last weekend. I mean, Orchestral, she's a freak of a horse and looking forward to seeing her in the Oaks. Tuta La Vida, that's another topic to talk about altogether. What a ride from Nashrawilla, and the antics mid-race between a couple of hoops were very entertaining to take in throughout the afternoon. The market says she can win going into Saturday. We've talked about the quick backup with her before and how effective that was in the spring. You reckon she gets through the soft going? And I mean, we know she gets the trip, not a problem in the world.
Trip's fine, wet track is a tick, everything's saying yes. The only thing saying no is how good is Riff Rocket. To me, yeah, Chaya Wolf's a good horse, and maybe there are a couple of others that are, each way specs. But to me, and the market's kind of dictating it now, it looks as though there are two primary chances. Tom Kitten's got out to $7. So how good is Riff Rocket? The camp has a concern, and if that camp has a concern, I have a concern. If you don't think a horse will get a strong 24, and now we're talking about, even though you've won a Group 1 at 25, now we're talking a wet slog 24, I don't know, that just has me a touch concerned. What's with that, by the way?
I find it really fascinating that the camp keeps saying that he won that Derby in Melbourne on raw ability and not his ability to necessarily run out a strong 2,500 metres, but he did it. And they're still going to the Derby yet again. So, and they had options to run him in Group 1s over the 2,000.
And maybe they're questioning the depth of that race, and I know Athelflad's not running this autumn because she had a drama, Maddie Smith's galloper. I think she's very good.
Yeah.
So even if the back end were bad, I still think they beat a handy horse that day. Anyway, to my eye, it's a race in two. And if you back the $15 Zardozi, which fingers crossed a lot of you did, then now you can back Riff Rocket, and if either of them win, you win.
I'm keen to back Riff Rocket. I think he will find himself at that $354 quote come Saturday. I think she will move even tighter in the market, so I'm keen to have a play there. And then Wymark as well. Just a fascinating story in that 4 starts ago he was winning a benchmark 64, and now he's running in a Group 1 Australian Derby at the $7, $8 quote. We think he'll get through the ground. Tommy Berry has a huge opinion of him. He's on an upward trajectory. The late entry fee that had to be paid, what a story if they pulled it off in the end, would be remarkable. But yeah, I think it's a race in probably 2 with a couple outside that for each way plays.
Yeah, tend to agree. As for the size, it's all about the redemption story with Stormboy, and if he can atone for the golden slipper. His run in the slipper was good. My concern there is that everyone thinks, he just had things against in the slipper, so it'll all be right this time. Well, most of the problems were of his own creation. He missed the kick. He then got keen in the run, albeit with a bit of urging. That was to find position. And then he was in the worst part of the track because he had to cut underneath horses. So why do we suddenly think he'll jump like the best of them.
It's so funny how only a few weeks ago we were singing this horse's praises as the best 2-year-old to ever come out of Randwick and maybe, the greatest stallion prospect that we could produce in Australia for a decade. And the bubble, it hasn't burst yet.
No.
But on Saturday, if he doesn't win, there's going to be doubters as to his ability going forward. I completely agree with you. He missed the kick. Well, who's to say he's not going to do that again? And on a heavy track, and where's he drawn? He's drawn gate 8, so you're going to have to settle back. I mean, that's probably not going to be necessarily the worst part of maybe that's the better part of the ground on Saturday if we do get that really heavy rain. But, yeah, it is amazing how in racing we jump on bandwagons really quickly, but we jump off as well. I still think he has the potential to be a real superstar colt with a number of Group 1s under his belt. I know the team at Coolmore and all the original owners in Stormboy as well, they would have loved to have seen him win the Golden Slipper, and the disappointment in some of those owners' faces on that day was real.
Yeah.
So for them, I hope that he can atone himself and he can get that Group 1 that in his early juvenile year, I think we would have all said he deserved. But I can't take my eyes off Manal and what she did in the slipper.
Late.
Car park, late, ducked and weaved, got through, flashed home brilliantly. She's drawn the car park yet again. But again, heavy ground, maybe that's not going to be the worst part of the track to be in.
Your point that we're a fickle lot and we jump off very quickly is absolutely spot on. I seem to remember nearly all of us talking about how the girls weren't up to the boys.
Oh,
well,
ridiculous.
Lady of Camelot and Manal have run pretty well, I seem to remember. Hey, on Lady of Camelot, I think that it was disrespectful to go up $2.50 Stormboy, $6 her. Her win was better than that.
Absolutely.
And Coleman was probably the run of the race. So they were the two early looks for me, but we'll need to reassess on the day.
Great edition of the sires. The Doncaster is one of those races in Sydney that is very special. Handicapped mile, and it's such a special mile at Randwick. Bumper field, full of quality, really open edition this year. But I tell you what, going through these weights, I'm finding it really difficult to get my head around. We've got 2 horses over the 55, so think about it, who's a 2-time Group 1 winner and also the winner of the Everest, and Oban Buramai, who's the Japanese stallion who won the Golden Eagle. He hasn't raced since he won that $10 million event at Rosehill Gardens last year. Pericles with like 3rd top weight. I'm scratching my head over that. I'm sure Godolphin are as well. He's won 2 Group 2s and he's run second to Oban Buramai. My point here is you look at those 3, the top of the weights, part of them getting those big weights is running exceptionally well or winning 2 races that aren't Group 1s. Obviously, they rated off the charts, but the Everest and the Golden Eagle aren't Group 1 races.
And when you have a look at the jockeys, one thing I will say about the best part about this is there's some jockeys that don't usually get Group 1 opportunities that are getting them, and that's great. The offset to that is you've got jockeys like James McDonald who don't have a ride because they can only make the weight on probably 2 horses in the race.
Yeah.
So it's not just him. There are several that are missing out in this race. There are a stack from 51 down. And you mentioned earlier about horses that come from nowhere. We've got another Will. I know the Doncaster Prelude isn't really the form race for a Doncaster, which seems odd, but it isn't. That's proven. Going from a benchmark 72 all the way through to winning a Prelude and into the Donny and given a good chance. So it is a race with so many options. It's taken me 7 hours to do a runner by runner.
Because of how big the field is, but also you've got horses coming from a variety of different races, both in Victoria and in Sydney. The wet form is going to be so ultra important because we're going to get this huge amount of rain in the next couple of days.
Maybe.
And also, as I said, the weights, so another Will, his win last weekend. I mean, I know they don't adjust these weights, but, he's ahead of Celestial Legend who 49 kilos and won a Randwick Guineas. You've got horses like Berkshire Shadow who has had 1 Australian start and won a Group 3 in the UK, and he's further up in the weights. I'm not a handicapper and it'd be a hard job to do, but there's a few here that I'm scratching my head over.
Yeah, and I'm sure the connections are too, but that's part of the intrigue of the Doncaster
Yeah.
is getting your horse in and handicapped to win. And Celestial Legend is undoubtedly in that category down there low in the weights. I thought a couple that were forgotten, $17 about Lady Laguna, who has a huge weight swing on most of her main rivals from lead-up races. $17 early was ridiculous. Lindemann could get to an obscene price.
Yeah.
Now, the wet track might throw things out and the wide gate throws things out. But bar the gate, I almost would have had him on top if we were on a good to soft track.
Yeah.
He was fantastic the start prior, and he was actually really good the start prior to that against Militarized and gets a lot of weight relief. So there are a couple at a price that I think you could look at.
The other one I want to throw in at a price is Democracy Manifest. Loves the mile.
Yep.
Ran 5th in an Epsom, and that was on good ground. Once he gets on that heavy, sloggy ground, he grows a couple of legs. So
True.
I'm keen to have an each-way play on Democracy Manifest for Jay Ford in the saddle, but my bet will be with Militarized. He's class. He's 4th up. He hasn't run a bad race this preparation. He loves the wet ground. He loves the mile. Zach Purton looking for his 4th Doncaster. I mean, just makes sense to me.
Speaking of making sense, we're both in the I Wish I Win camp in the TJ. Good wet track stats. Was probably the best sprinter outside Joe's champions. We saw that in the Everest, running second. So everything would say that the Moody Coleman trained galloper's the horse to beat, even though it's not favourite.
Amazing story how his preparation has all unfolded. So he had a bone chip removed from his knee after his last preparation. Of course, Luke Nolan had that track work fall and he's unable to make the weight to ride. So James McDonald to ride I Wish I Win. First up into a TJ. I just don't doubt Moody. I just don't doubt him. I mean, if this all pays off and he wins a second consecutive TJ with this horse who you see photos of him as a foal, he wasn't a pretty looking thing.
No.
Legs and limbs everywhere and plenty of issues. He's done a wonderful job. The real story for me, though, is Imperatrice. She has had a super stellar year. There is no doubt about that. But all throughout the spring of last year, the talk from Tiako was, we're not coming to Sydney, we're not coming to Sydney. And I think the undertone of that was she's just better in Melbourne. She's a better Melbourne horse on that leg. But this time around they haven't shirked the task of the TJ or coming to Sydney. Maybe they've put a bit more work in her at home for the Sydney way of going. I also am not sure about her on a complete bog track, if that's what we get. And while she's won a couple of Group 1s this preparation, I don't want to doubt a superstar, and that's what she is. She will be crowned Horse of the Year in my eyes. Is she going as well as she was last spring?
No. Couple of lengths off. And you need to factor in too, this will run more like a 1,400 metres, I would imagine.
100%.
And that's what I Wish I Win really is. And that's why I'm in that camp. And Johnny Rocker may have lots of upside, but that just does not read as well to me. I don't want to be seen as, based in Sydney and knocking the Melbourne form. As I agree with you, she's a champion, but I think she's a couple of lengths off where she was in the spring for sure.
So I Wish I Win?
Yep.
All right.
It's been a familiar theme, the wet track.
Oh my gosh, we've been saying for the last couple of weeks, this is too good to be true. This beautiful sunshine, good for tracks. It's been marvellous, but we get to that first week in April each and every year and something up there happens and we get this deluge before day one of the championships. It's almost inevitable. That's what you've got to be looking out for, punters, on the weekend if we do get that rain, is just that heavy track form. But
Marzu time. It's Marzu time.
Who's your favourite wet trackers of all time?
So I've got a top 5, but this isn't top 5. If they were to have a match race, it'd be super weird because they're all different distances, different eras. If you're talking about the best horse I've ever seen on a wet track, it's probably Winx. But she doesn't feature in my top 5 because this is, when I think of wet trackers, who do I think of?
So she was the great all-rounder, you're saying,
Well,
not a purist
I think
wet
she went
tracker.
to a new level on heavy. But anyway, Strawberry Road was another one who does. So these are special mentions. Strawberry
Hang on,
Road.
it's a top 5 with special
Yeah,
mentions.
it is. Strawberry Road won 9 of 15 on heavy, including an AJC Derby on a heavy 10. So you probably have to go in there. And Subby.
Yeah, we loved Subby.
We love Subby. We love a grey in the wet as well. So anyway, there are a few greys that feature in this list.
It's weird though, isn't it?
Of all of the lists, this is my favourite list to do. Before I do the list, I'll build the hype. If if you think what is the heaviest track you've ever seen and a horse win, does one spring to mind?
Not straight off the top of my
I seem
head.
to remember Pompey Ruler winning a good race on like a stupidly heavy track on an Anzac Day. But anyway, the one that came to my mind was True Crime. Remember that day where we got washed out after, I think, one race?
Yes.
And True Crime went around favourite and breaststroked. And then halfway down the straight, rolled on the back because it was that bad. Anyway, that was it doesn't feature on my list either.
Oh my God, here we go again.
So at number 5, do we have a drum roll? At number 5, Sunline. So Genuine Freak, 22 of 48 career starts on wet. She won 4 of 5 on heavy. A Furious Stakes, Cox Plate Romp was on soft at number 5. So
God, she gets in at number 5. Who's going to be number 1?
Well, she's better than every horse in front of her. But this is my top 5 when I think of wet trackers. Who comes to mind? Number 4, Mick Bell and Jungle Edge.
Yep.
So won the Star Kingdom BRC Sprint on heavy, 3-time Group 1 place getter on heavy, 28 runs on good, not one win.
Yeah.
So that's the other part about a heavy.
So your criteria is on the good, can't be doing anything.
Yeah. All 18 wins on rain affected.
Yeah.
Heavy starts, 19 runs, 8 wins, 6 minors.
Yep, that's fair.
Could not run a yard on top of the ground. Okay. Shelby 66.
Wow. What a story that was.
So Morris McCartan, Group 1 Galaxy in 2022, 24 starts on soft, 10 wins. Has to be in there. Shelby at number 3.
Wow.
Number 2, going back a little way, but not that far back, or maybe I'm just old now, Red Tracer.
Yeah. Well, she's had many a foal now.
She was pretty much unbeatable on heavy. So 5 from 6, won the Group 2 Dane Ripper, Group 3 Millie Fox on heavy, Tats Tiara on a soft 7. Red Tracer was a proper swimmer.
And the number 1 wet tracker in Benway's top 5, plus a couple more wet trackers of all time is...
A horse that wouldn't beat any of them. Jungle Ruler and the Gouch. So... when I think wet tracker, I straight away go to Jungle Ruler, which maybe talks about where I grew up, but it also, I guess, is a throwback to when I was maybe peak fandom as well. So it wasn't stakes level, but 115 starts, 65 of them were on soft or heavy tracks, 17 wins, was a dual Peninsula Cup winner, 1 on heavy at Flemington and Sandown as well, the Ghostly Grey and the Gouch, number 1. And... will forever be number 1.
Please
Ask me again in 40 years, still number 1.
Please provide your own feedback as to that list. Well done. A lot of research and personal effort went into that list.
People will feel passionately about them because for some weird reason we just love horses that only come into it on the wet, I think.
It must annoy some trainers though.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, imagine everyone that was getting knocked around by Jungle Edge a couple
You'd
of seasons
be like, what's
ago.
going on here?
Or even, even Shelby.
Poor Shelby.
Righto.
This week also marks the 10th anniversary of the passing of Nathan Berry, and we both caught up with Tommy Berry this week, and it was a great initiative in the first year of his passing. Only a couple of weeks later that the ATC instigated the Nathan Berry Medal for the jockey who accumulates the most points over the Group 1s throughout the 2 days of the championships. And it's a medal that...
in the country and provincial.
Yeah, and it's a medal and an award that jockeys want to win because Nathan was held in such high regard for everybody, and so is Tommy. You know, a great racing family, and he is sorely missed. Tommy won it in the first year.
With James?
Day 2 that he had in only 2 weeks after Nathan's passing, where he won 2 Group 1s and a Group 2. Just crazy stuff. A Queen Elizabeth on Diamond Drill, a Sydney Cup on the offer, and a Sapphire Stakes win for Gay as well. How he was able to do that on that day, I don't think any of us will ever be able to grasp. He doesn't even know how he did it. So, yeah, we reflect on Nathan's passing from 10 years ago, but I'd really love to see Tommy win it this year. 10 years on, it would be so poetic.
Yeah, I mean, he said, and I'm sure, I can't wait to see your chat with him. When we were talking, it was funny, he mentioned the fact that he was so glad he won at year 1 because the pressure by now would just be ridiculous.
Charts,
and there were some years where he didn't even have a chance. Like Huey's book was just ridiculous. James has had a couple of years where, you know, he takes a world of beating and they shared at year 1. So, yeah, it would obviously mean a lot. We might give a little bit of a sneak peek, actually, to a walk and talk with Tommy. And it's a really sad story, but it's also like an amazing story about his reflections on Nathan, how sometimes in the saddle he just feels as though Nathan is around. And you talk about doing it tough, riding a few weeks afterwards. Well, imagine heading back to Singapore to ride in a Singapore Cup. The last time he was there was essentially to pick up his brother and take him home. So let's have a sneak peek on that, and we'll discuss it off the back.
It was a tough day because I remember saying yes to it. I got there and they put me in a hotel that I'd stayed at while Nathan was crook. And I remember calling... I called Mr. Teo from China Horse Club. I was riding for him there and I said, I can't stay here. I just can't. So I sat out the front, down the street, and he picked me up and took me to a different hotel. We got there on the day of the races, and Military Attack was short price favourite for John Moore, and I was on Dan Excel. And we were in the barriers and it was like time had just frozen. I was sitting there and this white butterfly was flying around in front of come through the front of the gates, did a few laps and then just took off. And I remember I said, I'm gonna win this. And I just rode it, followed Military Attack, come off of his back, and the rest was history. It was an amazing moment, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I'd got on the first plane and got straight out of there. I didn't want to be there one bit, but it was just one of them moments in life where you're like, he was there, I could feel it, and it was meant to be.
It really breaks my heart to watch Tommy relive that moment. The butterfly, like, so beautiful.
And imagine how difficult it is for him. You know, so we put that together, and I was kind of keen to get Tom's thoughts on it. And he was really, he was lovely afterwards. Like, we covered some topics that I haven't covered with people ever, let alone on camera, talking about grief and all those sorts of things, and how you handle it and the impact it has on people. And he was so brutally honest. But when I sort of intimated, I wonder whether he'd watched it, and he said, I'll probably never watch it, because he just can't. And in terms of regular reminders, it's not just Nathan Berry Medal, the time of year, the 10-year anniversary, Magic Millions, when he thinks about unencumbered. Every time he looks in the mirror, I know, he gets a reminder. So just think about that.
Hey,
it's
well
not
done
like
to you,
normal
though.
grief.
It's a beautiful chat. And Tommy was so open and honest with you, and that's the kind of character he is. He loves talking about his brother because he was his best mate. So no doubt that Nathan will be with him over the days of the championships, and I do hope that T. Berry can get it done.
That'll be on Play Central and STC. And I recommend people watch it, because I think your perception of people in general will change, but especially of Tommy. You'll start to understand him a little bit better. We get to celebrate the country champs.
It's a great initiative, isn't it? I think we're celebrating the 10th year of the country championships as well. So we have got Bandy's boy for Danny Williams at the top of the market, but we've seen that he's had a couple of issues maybe with an abscess appearing after he won the Star Kingdom last Saturday. Danny and the team think he'll be good to go, but that's got to be the superior form reference. He's in red hot form, this horse. He's got a great little record that he's building. Is he your on-top selection, or have you looked elsewhere?
I want to look elsewhere. I think he's very much the horse to beat, but you've got to look at price as well. Last year, I was so keen on Bianco Villano, stupidly keen, and then the rain and the barrier cruelled its chances. This year, going even better, won the Albury qualifier, and I was like, perfect redemption time. Heavy track, potentially, and a terrible barrier. I'm like, what is happening here? Now, that's me. Imagine the connections. Anyway, I think that will still be my go. If you have a look in the form guide and just look on paper at his form on good, soft, heavy, you'll say heavy puts him out. But watch the run back from last year. Hit the line really well. If they get luck from the gate, I think they can win.
I am so excited for
Same.
Saturday. 4 Group 1s, quality all throughout this card. Headlined by the Doncaster, the Derby, the Sires, and the TJ. Question without notice, who's going to have a fill-up on Saturday? Trainer, jockey, connections, who will be the story come Sunday, do you think?
There's a fellow who works for Sky called Ben Way, who is going to have one of the all-time days on the punt. Mark that down.
Oh, a bit of self-promotion. Good luck to you, young man.
Thank you, you
hope
too.
you're here next week after filling up your pockets. So we think returns for day 2 of the championships next week.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.